The Atlantic's still a little crazy, but the bark is worse than its bite. What's going on, guys? I'm certified meteorologist Jonathan Kegas. In this video, we are, of course, going to talk about the Atlantic. Harold made landfall earlier on this Tuesday morning. Franklin is still out there and poses a big threat to the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Could become a hurricane post-island interaction. Then I want to take you on a little journey towards the first week of September. We're going to look long range to see if the basin is going to be favorable for development as we roll through the climatological peak. And then we're going to finish stateside towards the end of this video. Big-time heat, record-breaking ridge of high pressure, just shattering temperature records out in the plains, in the Midwest, upper Midwest. We're going to break all that down towards the end of the video. Before we get into that, if you do like staying up to date or learning about the weather, you have to hit subscribe, especially as we are moving through the peak of hurricane season. If you find this content helpful or informative, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help us out a lot. We're starting with Franklin. Again, Harold pretty much over, made landfall in Texas. It is bringing some potentially flooding rains to parts of South Texas, but they do need the rain out there, so where we're not seeing the flooding, it is beneficial. Tropical Storm Franklin, it doesn't look too healthy. It's not going to matter for the Dominican Republic and Haiti, though, as all that tropical moisture is still coming towards us along the islands. It's post the islands that this thing could become a hurricane. Latest advisory on Franklin from the Hurricane Center is it's likely going to hit the island as a 45 to 55 mile per hour tropical storm, you see, by Wednesday morning, August 23rd. And then as it gets away from the Dominican Republic, you see it slowly start to strengthen. Then there's kind of weird things out there in the Southwest Atlantic, but you see all the way by Sunday as we get into the upcoming weekend, an 80 mile per hour hurricane as it just kind of meanders here. I know it looks like it's tilted towards Bermuda and back to the United States. I'll show you some of the modeling on that in a little bit, but it does look like it's going to curve back out. If you're happening to be watching from Newfoundland or Nova Scotia, pay close attention to Franklin in about a week to 10 days. So it's going to be far away, but could be coming in your direction. Visible satellite shows, again, this thing is a little ragged. We have some wind shear working towards it, the center in there somewhere. Earlier, it looked like it was trying to get the low-level center displaced from all the thunderstorm activity. That's not a good thing if you're a tropical system. They want to be co-located, kind of like a stack of pancakes. You want that low-level center right underneath all those thunderstorms so we can start to develop that center, that well-defined center, to really take advantage of any kind of warm water. We're just not seeing that decoupling, as we call it there, but still, it's not going to matter for the Dominican Republic and Haiti. You see, tropical storm warnings are in place, and even though it looks kind of ugly, again, that's a good thing that it's not going to really ramp up, but still, the calling card with Franklin is going to be the very heavy rain and that mudslide, landslide potential. You see, though, tropical storm warnings up for most of the island. Mentioned I wanted to show you the modeling on this, really for down the road purposes, and the model's all biting on this weird thing happening once we get towards the Turks and Caicos, give or take, in the next couple of days, kind of coming out this way and then cutting back into kind of almost like a goalpost here between the United States and Bermuda. There is Bermuda right here. And then heading close to Nova Scotia, and then getting close to Newfoundland. And again, this is about 10 days out. So again, a long way to go, a long way to watch this. Certain weather systems may be able to pick this up. But certainly, again, if you are watching from the Canadian Maritimes, you're going to want to pay close attention to what Franklin does over the next couple of days and what steering mechanism comes in and kind of sweeps that up. So we're going to watch that closely for you guys as, of course, that flooding threat for the Dominican Republic and Haiti, even the western side of Puerto Rico. Here's kind of the broad scale here of the Atlantic, and I keep on saying this. I've been saying this for the last 2 weeks, that even though we had a bunch of those blobs all over the map, that the bark is worse than its bite. The reason we did have a flurry of storms named over the weekend, we had Harold named early this morning, while they have met the classification to become a named storm, getting to that wind speed sustained greater than 39 miles an hour, having that low-level circulation, and having thunderstorms trying to wrap around the center, the Atlantic is just not conducive. Thankfully, that is a good thing for the most part. And it's ripping those storms apart. We had Gert out here. It's now just a couple of clouds. Emily is right here. What was Emily? It's now a remnant low, but already highlighted again for the chance once it drifts into the North Atlantic to develop. Again, when I say the bark is worse than its bite, we are, of course, watching closely the high impact zones here of South Texas and the Dominican Republic and Haiti because of the flood threat here. But there's nothing that's been concerning on this map. Again, we've been talking about this for the last couple of weeks, that nothing, at least in this short term was going to get super big and strong. Now, Harold, again, could become a hurricane once we get beyond Hispaniola, but it's not going to impact any land at that strength. Again, watching down the road for the Canadian Maritimes, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia. I want to broaden this out, take this kind of long range here, and I want to show you a couple of things. Before I kind of put this model into motion, I want to show you this. This map here is on tropicaltidbits.com. It's a great resource if you like to look at some of the computer models out here. What we are looking for here is the upper level divergence. When air evacuates up top, way up into the atmosphere, it's got to be replaced with some rising air at the surface, and that's what we're seeing here in these green plots. It's been a while since the Atlantic has been conducive in terms of getting that rising air to form thunderstorms. That's one of the reasons why we are seeing all of these thunderstorms pop up and trying to consolidate. There's still a lot of dry air out there, so it's not completely favorable. That green blob on your screen, though, is likely because of something we call the Madden-Julian oscillation. It's a big convective complex of thunderstorms that circumnavigates and navigates the globe every 30 to 60 days, and when that pulse comes through, it tends to help to enhance tropical activity. So we have now seen this little uptick after being nice and quiet for a while, courtesy of the Madden-Julian oscillation. If this was not here, there'd be hardly a cloud in the sky right now with how hostile, and hostile is a good thing for us, bad for the storms, the Atlantic has been. But this is through the next week, so we're under that green period. Anybody watching from the Gulf states and have seen crazy model runs of this monster hurricane coming up in the next week, it's possible. It's in the realm of possibilities. The one thing I will say, you have to look here and notice that little green flare up here over Central America. That's where modeling is putting it. I'll show you that model in just one second. But the modeling does promote a whole lot of rising motion over Central America over the next week and over the entirety of the Atlantic Basin. As we move into the first week of September, we still have that. So where it's situated at this time as we get to the first week of September, you would expect more storms to come rolling off of Africa if the Atlantic can support them. And that remains to be seen because, thankfully, we just haven't been able to see the Atlantic support anything. So again, I don't want to say good news, but I mean, relatively good news off the bat. But again, we don't want to see that nice big green blob that I just showed you going through the basin either. The one thing I will say here, this is as we take a look at the second and third week. This is through September 12th, and we're getting that brown color back. So now we are getting that sinking air back. When air sinks, it warms up, it dries out, it kind of counteracts any thunderstorm development. So I'm optimistic here that as we start to roll through the second and third week of September, that after this little flurry that we are seeing, all the activity starts to go back towards the Pacific, which typically happens in an El Nino year. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. It looks like it might try to come back towards October, and we might be able to get something rolling pending that El Nino hasn't come full swing and just rips everything to shreds by the time we get to October. In an El Nino year, we oftentimes see that show up late, depending upon how it comes in. So we're going to be watching that closely. But again, the next week to 2 weeks here, as we move to the first week of September, we're going to be watching for the flurry of storms. The good thing is, right now, most of the Atlantic Basin has not been conducive. Where it has been, and that's why we saw Harold really try to get its act together right at landfall. Thankfully, there was not more water ahead of Harold, because as is typical in South Texas, if you're still with me, hit that thumbs up button. With that extra curvature of the shoreline, it helps to tighten up those storms. Plus, the water temperature was super warm there, and it helped to, you saw a little eye-like feature try to get going there. You saw it try to develop a core at the last minute. That was to be expected. We talked about that on this channel even before a lot of the modeling was picking it up. We said that it struggles with tropical waves going into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, it wasn't strong. We weren't expecting it to be a hurricane or anything like that, but nonetheless, that's what it did. I want to show you going into the future here, and this is the latest European run. It shows a lot of things. We're looking for these little circles here, these big red circles. So that's going to be Franklin. There's a little mumbo-jumbo junk up through here that tries to get going and then gets ripped apart. And then this is the weird thing here. Look towards Cancun. right to the bottom of your screen here, the left-hand side of your screen, this is one of those things that come up from that quasi-Central American gyre that tries to get going there, that rising motion, and it kind of tries to lift it up towards the North Gulf Coast. Is it possible? Yes. I will caution, though, that modeling like this is going to do the windshield wiper effect. Number one, also, the Euro wants to strengthen this over land, which is not possible, so there's some issues with the European. It's been super, super aggressive all year. The GFS has showed a storm in the Gulf. Some other things have showed a storm in the Gulf, too. It is possible. If one does develop, location is going to be unknown until it actually develops. So just be careful what you see on social media. If someone says, oh, we have this strong storm coming to the panhandle of Florida, or oh, we have this strong storm coming to Texas, tap the brakes just a little bit on that. We're not overly concerned for a location at this point. But as I showed you, the overall environment in the Western Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico is going to be, I think, the best it's been all season. And I'm saying best, I'm not excited for it. I'm saying the best it is relative to the storm. So I want to be clear about that. I'm not rooting for this. We want to keep everything out of the Gulf of Mexico, out of the Caribbean, because number one, it hits land. Number two, the water temperatures are just crazy warm. Speaking of warm, we're going to end this here with looking at the pattern over the United States. If you're living in Texas, if you're living in the panhandle of Florida, and certainly living in the plains, it has been brutal. Record-breaking ridge of high pressure. Call this the Ring of Fire. Look at that, expanding all the way across the nation, really across much of the lower 48, with the exception of this little upper low here, keeping things cool. Another upper low over the Pacific Northwest, helping to keep things cool. We're going to bake under this for the next couple of days. The heat indices in the central plains and upper Midwest have been insane because of something known as evapotranspiration. Slang would be corn sweats. There's so much corn in Iowa. There's so much corn in Nebraska that when it sweats, when it gets hot, it leaves a lot of moisture. And it acts almost like a body of water. And when you get those nice southerly winds, it pushes all of that moisture. We had some crazy heat indices over the past couple of days. That is going to continue. You see that big chunk of high pressure just kind of meandering, kind of drifting back south and sitting over Oklahoma, sitting over parts of Texas as well. I will say, though, if you are looking for some relief, especially on the eastern side of this big heat dome, it is going to be coming once we get into the next few days. This upper low that's kind of chilling over here, it kind of retrogrades back to the east a little bit. So you're going to get big-time relief towards parts of the Mid-Atlantic, certainly in the Northeast if you like a taste of fall. That is coming for you. And then maybe even back towards the Great Lakes into Michigan, parts of Wisconsin, Ohio, Indiana, Chicago, Illinois. The heat's still going to be cranked up, though, into Texas, into the panhandle of Florida. So that relief is not coming just yet. Instead of me talking about the heat, let me show you. Just look at this ramp up again on Wednesday afternoon. Those are the actual air temperatures surging beyond the triple digits from Dallas. We're closing in on that in Houston. A little bit cooler in San Antonio, but the huge heat really builds right through the nation's midsection as well. That's some of the Saharan dust that continues to hang out there. But when you add the actual heat index, the humidity to it, we have heat indices approaching 120 degrees. And again, that's because of all that extra humidity on top of this crazy blazing heat. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. If you do want to stay up to date on all things tropical weather related, all things weather related, especially as we go through the peak of hurricane season, I showed you the little flurry of these thunderstorms, at least, is likely to continue for the next couple of weeks, given the Atlantic gets a little more favorable, although I'm not sure that it will. So we'll keep a close eye on that. Let's keep that dry, dusty air there to kind of choke out these storms. Again, the Atlantic has not proven to me that it is ready to support those storms that could be fueled by that convective complex known as the Madden-Julian Oscillation. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you hit that subscribe button, we'll see you soon. If you hit that thumbs up button, we'd appreciate that. That really does help us out a lot. And we will catch you next time.